Hello and welcome back to Streaming Media Connect 2024. I'm Steve Nathans Kelly, Editor-in-Chief of Streaming Media Magazine and the Chair of Streaming Media Connect 2024. And welcome to our case studies session. First time we've done this in the Connect environment, and this session is brought to you by Teradek and TMT Insights. Before we get started, a few quick housekeeping notes. Well, if anyone can identify the music we just heard and is still here at the end of the session, put the name of the track and the name of the artist in the chat, and you'll be able to win a $50 Amazon gift card at the end of the session. And if you attend 2 or more sessions this week, you will be entered to win an OBSBot Tail Air Power AI-powered PTZ camera. And the winner will be notified sometime after the show. Join us May 20th to 22nd at Stream Media NYC in New York City for our next live and in-person conference. The registration is open now, and the link should be in the chat with a discount code for me. And sessions from all 3 days this week are available on the stream. All 4 days this week are available on the Stream Media YouTube channel. Most of those are up there already. So yeah, that link is in the chat as well. So on to the business at hand. I'd like to introduce Tyler Riddle and Derek Nickell, product managers at Teradek, who are going to be talking with Dan Houze, VP Encoding and Digital Strategy at BC Live, about how BC Live used Teradek Prism and Core to provide the streaming infrastructure for a massive 2-day music festival at the Las Vegas Festival grounds. Tyler and Derek and Dan, why don't you take it away?
Thanks a lot, Steve. Tyler couldn't make it today, so it's just going to be myself and Dan. Thank you, everybody, for joining in and listen to us ramble on a little bit. My name's Derek Nickell. I'm a product manager at Teradek under the live production side of the house. And I have, as introduced, Dan Houze with us. Dan, how are you doing today?
Pretty good. How about yourself?
Excellent, excellent.
Awesome.
So what we're going to do is I will start sharing here, and we've built a deck for everybody to take a look at while we go along here today. And what we're going to do is we're going to present a workflow that Dan and his team at BC Live put together using Teradek encoders and decoders for this production, this festival production. So I will go ahead here and just go through the agenda at hand. So we'll discuss the setting, the challenges that his team had with setting this up and making this work in the venue that they were at. And then look through the solution that they had with using Teradek and the outcomes. And if we have time, take some questions at the end. So this took place at the Las Vegas Music Festival grounds. Dan, how did you come across this, and how did this start out? The learning about the setting and the venue. Is this something you guys have done in the past, or is this new to you?
No, we've done these in the past. This is a client of ours that we've done a bunch of festivals with. This particular festival, as you can see there, it was unique because it was over 40 acres of ground to cover. You know, a lot of attendees. Their primary concern was obviously getting distribution where they needed it to go, but also trying to keep in mind costs, right? We don't want to be encoding and decoding, 20 different feeds up into the cloud using internet, data that they would need to then pay for, right? So they wanted us to get really creative of how we could set up sort of a VLAN within the grounds that we could do all of our encoding and decoding, and then also meet their other objectives. So,
excellent. So you're familiar with the client. This was just a new thing. That's great to kind of push the envelope of where you can, where you can take this technology, what you can do with it. Let's see. So the challenge being, and you started talking about it there, is where did these need to go? You said there was a lot of different internal feeds that needed to be routed, internal feeds that need to stay internal and be rerouted. Where did that?
Yeah, sure. This was a music festival, as we mentioned. A lot of artists tents, a lot of artist trailers that had, specific needs. They wanted to watch the stage that they were performing on, or maybe their managers did. And so we needed to have a custom multi-view that literally could just be deployed in about 15 different trailers around the property, that we knew that they could just operate themselves and not have to rely on us to switch feeds and things like that. So that was a big part of it. They wanted it to be user-friendly. Obviously, local production offices where people from the music festival management, security, all those fun things, wanted to be able to monitor feeds. But they also wanted us to be able to send our feed to the LED towers that were around the grounds. And that was a cool thing to be able to do, to provide to them. Normally in an environment like that, you'd have to run tons of fiber, video fiber cable around a premise, along with your existing infrastructure, just to get video signals pushed around. And so this allowed us to use their already existing IT infrastructure and just have a dedicated VLAN. And then lastly, we wanted to also get within our VLAN, we wanted to actually get offsite for executives and artist management teams who weren't on the prem, right? So we wanted to keep it mostly internal, as secure as possible, but then also have a way to link up to a cloud-based solution that we could deliver and also keep that secure. So obviously Teradek Cloud and the core platform came in beautifully for that.
Right. Yeah, the routing tools that exist there, and the ability to do all your restreaming to multiple destinations from a single cloud while managing your entire fleet of devices that are hooked up to that as well is one of the key components of core. That entire orchestration platform, allows you to remotely, wherever you're at, whether you're at the venue or not, to control those devices, to change resolutions, bit rates, carriers if you're going out over LTE or anything like that, dependent on signal loss or any issues that you're having. Remotely control all that and send it out and record it in one place. I mean, that's going to give you that entire tool set right in front of you wherever you're at. And with the flexibility of prisms, and we're going to go into the tech and the workflow here in a second, but the flexibility, sorry to name drop the Prism Flex itself, but that's why it's there. That's why that name exists, is that it is flexible. You can deploy it locally with the cloud, both or all at the same time. So
yeah, and also I'll throw out with the Flex, we really, obviously it's in a really good chassis that you guys have spent years and years perfecting, and it held up. A lot of these music festivals are pretty rough on gear, right? It's to say the least, and especially in Vegas, right? It's going to be freaking hot, 100 degrees or whatever every day. And so,
But I'm sure you're using it in a very controlled space with no dust or any debris.
Oh, absolutely. Yeah, of course,
Right.
of course. Yeah, so these units held up really well for that, and just gave us the confidence that we could put them down. We call them throwdowns sometimes for a reason. We're not going to toss them, but they're really good at just living behind a stage in a tent, or living, outside a pipe and drape somewhere behind a stage. Sometimes, how festivals are. We just got to go with the flow, right? So
Exactly. So how did that flow look? We're on the solution now, and what you use to get the workflow accomplished. Some of these were parked behind towers. Was there any casing? Was there anything else additional that you needed to make these work and last the entire show?
no, we ended up just putting all of these in an IT rack at each stage. So, they went hand in hand with the IT network that was already on site. We had a dedicated VLAN for all of the encoders and decoders. Most people might think of core as sort of just cloud-based only, right? I think that's how you guys primarily serve it. But don't forget that core is software, right? So it can be deployed locally in, let's say, a Linux server. And that's what we ended up doing for this particular activation, is that we used core. We kind of brought it down out of the cloud and had it locally on site, so that way we could transmit all of those signals back and forth on a local network. So literally all of these Prism Flexes were just built into the IT racks behind each stage. And then, of course, I talked about Core Share, which allowed us to basically give a multi-view option that was controlled through an Apple TV in all of the artists' compounds and all of their locations, which was awesome, and it worked really, really well.
Yeah, the beauty behind core share is that accessibility, and having it on multiple devices, or dropping down, and the flex, going back to the flexibility sort of mindset behind this entire product line is, being able to dump it down to an iPad or an iPhone or an Android or whatever that artist or user needs to look at it on, being able to just pull that up at any time. You talked about the on-premise servers that we had, the Hyperion here that's listed. That essentially is that core hub in the middle of everything. Did that end up living or needing to live at more of a dedicated IT space, or was that something that was as well just used in a rack somewhere back in video control, and it worked just as it was?
Exactly. Yeah, they had a dedicated office for us in their production spaces. And, I'm a bit of a control freak. I like to see my gear if I can, rather than it being racked somewhere. And so we just had it with us, in our production office area. And it was connected to one of the core switches, a 10 gig switch. So we knew that, bandwidth wise, if we started going crazy and doing anything really, really robust, that we would have enough bandwidth for that.
And what was the signal flow that you were passing around? Was it just 1080, 4K? What were you throwing through the network?
Mostly 1080/30. The LED towers did require us to do 1080/60, and that was actually I'm glad you brought that up, because that was kind of another cool use of the Flex series, is that even though, let's say, your input may be 1030, 1080/30 or 720/60 or something, the decoder can go ahead and up-res that for you if you need to in your particular workflow. And in this particular situation, the switchers that they were using to power the LED walls did need to be very specific at 1080p 5994. So it was awesome. Even though the extra bits technically weren't there, Flex did a great job with just kind of doing the up conversion on the decoder, and we passed it off to their switcher with no issue.
Excellent, excellent. No, that takes another link out of the chain. In place, you would put a decimator or a Teradek or something from Blackmagic to kind of do that scaling as fast as possible without as little delay as possible. But having that built into the box, it takes that extra delay component and that extra chain out of the links of chain that are already there.
Yeah, and absolutely, Derek. The other cool thing is that production, we weren't necessarily aware of this requirement until after the units had been deployed, and we were back at the production office. As we said, tons of acreage. We had a little golf cart assigned to us and normally in the old school days, right before these kind of products, you'd have to drive back over there, flip a switch on the decimator or something. But with this solution, we were literally able to just go into core and change the resolution output as easy as hitting a button and then hit apply. And it was beautiful.
From your phone, from whatever you got in your pocket, you can adjust those. So yeah, saves time, saves energy. Excellent. Good to hear. All right, moving on. So this is a
very busy.
This is your very busy workflow, but it's more of a typical workflow for anybody else that's watching this. I'm sure you've seen worse.
Yeah, of course.
So, do you want to walk us through this and kind of outline what you guys did here?
Yeah, and again, I think for this, I've harped on it a few times already, but they wanted to design a system that did not require a lot of internet traffic, if not necessary, right? Because you get you go to, any kind of convention center or, God bless Smart City, but, as we all know, it's literally $1,000 a meg. If you want a 6 meg line at a convention center, you're going to pay $6,000 for that event. So all of those kind of cost factors go into these solutions. So we decided to deploy a Teradek Hyperion server on-prem. It was a Linux server, custom designed by you guys and delivered to us. Super easy, plug and play. We had our Prism Flex from each stage. So they were sitting backstage, or in one of the cases, they were sitting in like a truck, that was cutting the iMeg feeds essentially. Those would go in as sources, and then everything else was pretty much an output coming out of Hyperion and the core, right? So there was an output going to the different towers. There were outputs going to the Apple TV MultiView that we created with Core Share. And then finally, we did use another cool feature of Core and this particular product line is that once those feeds are inputted into Core, right, you have it available in many different flavors. So it's not just like, okay, we're going to send a feed into Core and then we can decode it with a decoder flex. Great. But no, that feed also becomes an SRT. It becomes an RTSP. It becomes TCP, MPEG TS, otherwise known as, and you can use those feeds in various different flavors. So what we did is in 2 different applications, we actually decoded 4 channels of SRT onto a 4-channel decoder. And we use that, to power, let's say, an artist hang area where they wanted different screens of each stage placed around, or we imported it into an OBS session using a Blackmagic deck link card and with SRT, and used that to create like a custom multi-view. So it was really nice to be able to send feeds again into Core, but then pull out different flavors of those feeds on the output as needed. So that's kind of what this map describes. I hope I didn't go too fast. I get excited.
No, and we're getting close here to the end anyway, so hopefully we have some time for some questions around this as well. But yeah, that's the beauty of the flexibility, and I keep harping on this flexibility, and since coming to Teradek, I've seen the opportunity for these devices to provide that extreme flexibility with production specifically, because you never know what you're going to get, and you might walk into something where a customer and your client that is 50% of your yearly income is requesting something on the fly. And I don't know about you, but that happens a lot.
Happens a lot, and then happened in this case. That's where we see the Core TV remote view. They said last minute, hey, this artist manager wants to watch their stage only, but I want to make sure it only goes to this guy in his email address. I don't want him to be able to share the link with other people. We want to be able to still keep this locked down as much as possible. And Core TV, the share solution was beautiful for that. Last minute, spin it up.
Spin it up and send it out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Moving on. So this is the look of the MultiView, the still here on the right. This was the MultiView you guys put together in OBS, correct?
Yeah. We just brought it in over OBS. We brought in different sources via SRT. And then also, the security folks for the festival were very concerned about the heat index, as we would be in Vegas and on particular that weekend. So that heat index was also being updated in real time along with a weather widget, just to kind of keep us all on the same page. And then on the left side, I think you can play that little video. That's just sort of a BTS of the grounds, and you can see the tower there in the background that was being powered by a Teradek Flex. And lots of people.
Lots of people around.
Yeah.
Excellent. Yeah, these are all excellent views of how to use this in different ways. So let's see, we're going to go to the next slide here, and if you want to talk more about the results, we've talked a little bit more. I'm going to play this video in the center here that also demonstrates the way the towers were used in that feed that you guys could send remotely using those decoders.
Yeah. Don't pay attention to the banding and the low quality of that. That was the phone that was used to capture that. The screens did look beautiful. So I just got to say that. But yeah, ultimately, these are low latency products as well in this particular, workflow. And so they were able to get, almost in real time, maybe 200-300 millisecond delay, over to those screens using the Teradek Flex encoder and decoder set. And we were able to really keep the costs down for them, and keep most of these feeds internal, but then send feeds of each stage to the cloud, when necessary.
Right. Yeah, only use the data when you need to use the data. And that's key in any sort of live REMI production, remote or other, completely remote or otherwise. That data cost always comes into play when somebody wants to call out, oh, let's send all the cameras to the cloud. Okay, let's make a calculator times how many cameras we have. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's your cost going up by tens. So
Right.
so with that, excellent looking production there. I'm glad everybody had a great time and it worked out as well as it did. Right now we are coming to the end, and on here, if you guys have any questions for myself or Dan, is our contact info. Mine, you can just hit us at live@teradek.com, and with Dan, Dan at bc.live for any of your questions or comments, or if you want to get deeper into the weeds on what happened here, please let us know. If there's any questions out there, I'm going to try and bring this up, and I'm going to stop sharing now so we can head back to here. Q&A. All right.
Oh, Steve, you're on mute.
Oh yeah, I'm on mute.
There you go.
Looks really exciting in the Q&A form there, Steve.
Come on, people. Ask us some good
I know
questions.
you guys got some questions. Yeah.
Yeah, I think you just answered every question everyone had. So yeah, no, that was great. So, and actually we just had someone comment, I was at that musical festival. My friends and I definitely had no connectivity. And we do have a question from Beth Rosen. She asks, what are the costs as far as per camera for uploading, encoding, and decoding?
So Dan, so if you have an encoder and a decoder together, MSRP for those flex units is $34.90. So you need an encoder and a decoder to pass that over an IP stream. If you're going to the cloud, you need to consider egress data as well. You can send that video into the cloud, but getting it back down costs money per stream. So that's really dependent on how many gigs per hour you're using and the quality, the bit rate of that stream and egress charges therein. But as far as MSRP, that's $34.90 a piece for those transmitters and receivers both.
And so we had another question, just a point of clarification. So does using Teradek, I guess the core, does it eliminate upload and download to the cloud?
Yes, the way Dan had this lined out is that we actually take the cloud instance and package that as a hardware on-premise server. So it's a Linux server that runs our Hyperion cloud service. And what that can do is restream, take in multiple streams, bond and debond. So if you are using LTE or any sort of private wireless CBRS, you can actually multi-channel and bond and debond through that service without ever touching the cloud or using any outbound data. So your LAN network would act as your entire wiring infrastructure, your back-end copper infrastructure, and that would pass the IP streams around and facilitate that locally.
Okay.
I'll add on to that, Derek, though. I think, most people probably use the product in the cloud, right? And so we want to make sure that people realize that as well, is that it's a great product. For example, the same client, their next music festival is much smaller. They only had 2 stages and they had a ton of bandwidth at this particular location, right? So they just sent the streams up to the cloud and then decoded them where they needed to be, right? So either solution works beautifully.
Thanks, Dan.
Okay. And another question that came in, could you view core share on mobile devices too, for those who would want to monitor while traversing the grounds?
Of course. So Core Share comes in an iOS version for M1, M2 processors. It also there's also a version in, I guess it's the Google Play Store for Android, and the iOS store for your iPhone and iPads as well. So that will give you the lowest possible latency over your monitoring service through Core Share. And we also have an Apple TV application as well for Corsair. So you can use a 4K Apple TV and plug that into a display somewhere and pull down the multi-feed and the multi-view wherever you're at.
And they love that. This client loved that part of the product. I mean, normally you would have to pay $10,000, $20,000 for a custom internal built system like this. And with Teradek, we're able to just download that app on the Apple TV. Obviously, there's security credentials. You tie it to an email address that's tied to that Apple TV. And that way, you know that only that TV is getting that stream. And they could see all 4 stages plus the multi-view as an option to select just with their little remote when they came into their trailer. And it was such a cool activation. So we were really excited about it.
And to add on that too, Corsair has tools to relinquish control and access as well. So you can set a date and a time to pull access from that video. So if you only need it for a certain amount of time and you don't want anybody else to come into it, you can set those standards as well before you share. You can also watermark it too. So if you're in an even higher security sort of mode or mindset with your stream, you can actually brand it with that user's email address across the entire video. It's ghosted so they can see the video, but it does add that next level of protection against your content.
Okay, and then another attendee asks, are there chat functions or other collaboration tools within it as well?
Within Corsair, you have an entire text chat platform as well as an ultra low latency audio platform. So the audio platform itself in Corsair is relatively new. You can connect over your iPhone, iPad devices, as well as the hardware itself. The hardware itself, which I have here, is a Flex decoder. You can use line level inputs on the back of the decoder here to actually pass analog audio from your RTS or your ClearComm system, whatever you're using in the back end to do any of your production calls. Patch that into a decoder or encoder, doesn't matter which, and push that audio into what essentially is a party line call. So everybody on the party itself would be able to talk and listen at the same time. You'd be able to remove users as needed in case you needed somebody just to listen instead of talk. So there's some management tools in there as well. So you could, and people have used this to completely direct remote productions over headsets from a control room to remote encoders in the field.
Wow. Yeah, and one more question from Beth Rosen. Hypothetically, could you run a virtual concert somewhere else and then cross-stream the virtual conference and celebrities and attendees on the towers to both audiences?
Theoretically, yes. Technically, yes.
Okay.
I would have to do a bunch of work with boxes and lines and stuff to make it all make sense in my head, but yes.
Okay, great. Any other questions for Derek and Dan while we have them here?
And again, if not, if you have questions later, just hit up live@teradek.com and dan@bc.live.
All right. Thanks, Dan. Thanks, Derek.
Thanks a lot. Thanks everybody for
Teradek. And so